anything, I know to go to her, okay? She is involved in our preschool ministry. She is the director of our preschool ministry. She takes care of the nursery. She does work and work and work and work and work. That's her calling. But if she had to stand here where I am now, even if she didn't have to say anything, she would be almost apoplectic, just having to stand in front of an audience. She just doesn't know what to do. Her calling is not to stand in front of a group of people and talk to them. But she has a very distinct calling, a very distinct ministry, which she fulfills and is doing what God has called her to do. I, on the other hand, 10 minutes with the bed babies, I'm going, oh, I'm so glad my kids have grown out of this stage. And actually 5 minutes with the bed babies, and I'm so glad that the kids have grown out of this stage. That's not what I do. When I was 4 years old, stood up in a crowded theater and saw my dad on stage and announced to the entire theater, "That's my dad!" And I've been in front of people ever since. The first summer jobs I ever had as a kid, I was on stage in front of people. It's as natural to me as inhaling and exhaling. I can't deal with little kids. This I'm fine with. She can deal with little kids all day long. This she couldn't deal with. Okay? You have that same kind of calling on your life that God has given you. God has given you something specific. He has a call on your life that nobody else can do except you. He has a plan for you that nobody else can carry out. Nobody else can do it. It's yours, and it's yours alone. And it's as individual. You know, we talk about God knows the number of hairs on your head. That's the kind of God we serve. He knows everything, and He has given you something particular that He wants you to do. That is an awesome call. That is an awesome call on our lives. And I can't do that for you. I can't even, coming in here one day and saying hello and then going, I can't even tell you what that call is. I don't know what it is. You need to discover that. As you grow in the Lord, He will reveal that to you. But we recall also that it's only through His grace. It's just through His grace that any of us get called. I mean, if you think about it, He doesn't need us. He chooses to use us, but He doesn't need us. He can do it all Himself. If He wanted to do something, He could wave a hand, think a thought, speak a word, however He wanted to do it. He's God. But He chooses to use us. There's a cliche that I use that I like a lot, and I say that cliches become cliches because there's truth in them. And so even though, yeah, I've heard this before, okay? But it got to be so popular and heard that many times because there's some truth in it. And one of them that I like a lot is, without Him, we can't. Without us, He won't. Now, if I can slow that down for you for a little bit, without Him, we can't. We are powerless on our own. There is nothing that we can accomplish of good for the kingdom of God on our own strength. We have to be working in the strength of God. It has to be God working through us, or it's wood, hay, and stubble, and it's just going to be burned up. So without Him, we can't. But without us, He won't. Because He chose to use His creation. He chose to use people to accomplish His purpose. Why? I don't know. We're flawed. We have our problems. We're inconsistent. There's a whole lot of reasons you could give for not using humans. But God, in His infinite wisdom, with His ways being higher than our ways, God chose to use human beings to accomplish His purpose. So without us, He won't do it. That's how important your call is. Your part of this work on earth will not get done without you, because God has chosen to use you to accomplish it. Without Him, we can't. But without us, He won't. And I also want us to notice, as we close out this look at the salvation and the calling that we have had this since the beginning of time. The end of verse 9, which is given to us in Christ Jesus before time began. So we have that God has given us a spirit of power, of love, and a sound mind, that He has given us salvation and a holy calling. What else has He given us? Well, He's also given us confidence, great confidence. If you look at verse 12, it says, "For this reason I also suffer these things. Nevertheless, I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed, and am persuaded that He is able to keep what I have committed to Him until that day." Knowing whom we have believed, and knowing that He is able, this is not exclusive to Paul as he wrote this. This is not exclusive to Timothy as he received it, as it was written to him. We have that same confidence. We have that same knowledge. Just like the other things that we have been given from God, the love, the sound mind, the salvation, the holy calling, those weren't exclusive to Paul and Timothy, and this is not either. We can have that same confidence to know whom we have believed and that he is able to do anything, even in tough times. Paul knew that he was able, that God was able to do. That's why he didn't have any fear. Even in prison, even in shipwreck, we think of the sufferings that Paul went through. And they are many. He writes elsewhere in the New Testament about all the things that he had been through. I've been beaten this many times, I've been thrown out of town, I've been run, all of the things that he's been through. Shipwrecked, left in the ocean. He has been through beatings. In fact, when he writes this, he's in jail. If you look at, let's see, verse 8. Do not be ashamed of me, New Testament, nor of me, his prisoner, but share with me in the sufferings for the gospel. Many of us will never know the kind of suffering that Paul went through. There may be some of us who have. I think of the example from the recent election, John McCain and Barack Obama, and whether you voted for John McCain or not, or whether you did or not, and Barack Obama even acknowledged that John McCain is a great patriot because of the service that he gave to his country and the time that he spent in the prison camps and the torture and the pain and the suffering that he went through in the prison camp. And yet, he says it was that love of God, it was the power of God that sustained him through that most difficult of times. Most of us will never know the kind of sufferings that Paul knew, the kind of sufferings that John McCain knew. Most of us will never know those. But in the sufferings that we have, we know that God is able to get us through them. Because certainly if he can get Paul through this, if he's been doing this for as long as he has, he's not going to suddenly fail with me. So we shouldn't have this kind of fear when we're going through the storms, but we should have this confidence that he has given us, that he is able. I have heard it said, another of my cliches, that you're either going into a storm, you're in a storm, or you're coming out of a storm. And that's just the way life cycles. It may be that you get a long time coming out of a storm before the next one starts. But those of you who have spent much time on this planet, you know that there is a series of storms. And if you're not in one of them, there's one coming. You've just come out of one, or there's one just around the corner. And when we walk through those storms, we need to have this confidence that God is able. There are some today who question that, especially those who deny the existence of God or want to deny the existence of God. They say, well, in these tough times, then, where is God? You think of dating back to the Twin Towers, even. How many hurricanes have we seen since that terrorist attack? How many tsunamis have we seen that have wiped people out? How many other terrorist attacks? You don't have to go back but one weekend to find a terrorist attack. The ones that in India just this past week that people were targeting specifically people from the West, people from America, people from England. That's who they were trying to. So there's tough times there. And people say, well, now where is your God? If God exists, if there is a God, where is he in this? Why? How does this happen if there's really a God? Well, the answer to that is God is right there, where he's always been. I loved the example when the first Christmas after, Christmas of 2001. I don't know if any of you remember this or not. There was a song that came out where they took Silent Night and they interspersed it with a voice speaking as though God's voice, answering that very question and saying, where was I? Well, I was on the 30th floor stairwell and I was listening to someone as they cried out to me and asked for forgiveness of their sins, which I granted them and then brought them home. Where was I? I was underneath the desk with the person who was praying for their family because he knew he would never see his family again. And I was right there, and I was listening to his prayers, and I was taking care of his family. I was there when some, even to their last breath, would not acknowledge me. I mean, it was a very, very powerful song that reminded us that God is always there. We may not understand the way that he's working, We may not understand why He's working in the way that He chooses to, but we can have confidence, no matter what is going on in our lives, that God is there, and that God is able to do above and beyond what we can hope